Julie. Forgot about that. Thank you. I'm Julie Roth, and I'm going to kind of facilitate this evening. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay, here we go. So this is where you are. You have made your way to the GLREA, the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association's Thursday night energy event. In this case, it's an Ann Arbor Solar story. Tonight, we're going to hear from Andrea Klooster, who is actually somebody who I know. Our children went to school together. Oops, I went backwards. And we worked on some, things in the PTO and some school theater stuff together that was really fun. Andrea is a theater director, and she has a whole bunch of stuff she's done. She used to work, be a librarian, I think, and she's a Norwex consultant and a fabulous mom and extremely involved in the community always. And we're excited to hear from her about her solar, especially because she has 2 solar arrays. I find it fascinating because one of them is in the DTE territory and one of them is in the consumers territory. So I'm just dying to hear about that. Anyway, so this is where you are. We're going to hear from Andrea in a minute. The solar stories and GLREA energy events are financially sponsored by the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or EGLE, McNaughton McKay Electric Company, and by Harvest Solar. The GLREA sponsors multiple Zoom programs. The first Thursday of every month, for the most part, is this. It's an Ann Arbor Solar story, where we have residents from Ann Arbor or businesses from Ann Arbor come talk about their solar. The second Thursday of every month are clean energy seminars. They're hosted by Mark Clevey, talking about all kinds of really interesting topics, sometimes policy, sometimes technical. So really recommend you look into those. The third Thursday of every month are Detroit Solar Stories, hosted by Diane Van Buren. And the fourth Thursday of every month is either my solar story from somewhere else in the state or an energy Q&A where people can come and just kind of get all their energy questions answered by people who like to hang around on Zooms and talk about energy. So feel free. You can sign up for any of those on the website, or all of them, the Thursday night energy events. The GLREA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization formed in 1991. It is celebrating its 30-year anniversary, and in fact, it's having its big annual meeting this Saturday. You can see the agenda on the website, and you can register for the meeting on the website. And I think the keynote speaker is a particularly phenomenal person this year. It's Missy Stultz of the Office of Sustainability and Innovations, where I work, in the city of Ann Arbor. I'm sorry, I didn't really introduce myself. And she's going to be talking about Ann Arbor's sustainable energy utility proposal. So really excited about that, but a lot of good speakers. Anyway, it's a 501c3. They've been educating and advocating for renewable energy in the Great Lakes region for a long time, and they've been doing a fabulous job of it. So ways you can help the GLREA is you can become a member or renew your membership. You can financially sponsor a membership for a local teacher or a local student who might be interested. You could tell others about the GLREA, encourage them to become members, or you can just give them money because they'll take your money as well. And that's about it. So, a lot more people came in while I was talking. So I'm going to hand it over to Andrea, who is our fabulous Ann Arbor resident, who's going to tell us her solar story.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for this opportunity to share. It's been really fun to pull everything together and really look at all our data a year into this. So just a little bit about how we came to do this. As a Norwex consultant, my business is sharing environmentally friendly products and ways of changing their homes to people, but I was driving around guzzling gas to do it, which felt very incongruous. So when our minivan needed to be replaced in 2017, we ended up getting a plug-in hybrid Pacifica minivan. So we had that right at the end of 2017. But then we were still burning coal to power it with DTE, and we were paying a little extra for their green energy thing, but still primarily burning fossil fuel. Solar is something that had always interested me, but I really didn't think it was something that we would be able to afford, or that would be, at a manageable place yet. So I was always kind of keeping an eye out on it, and especially talking to friends who had done it. So in 2019, when Julie hosted a Solarize event, we went to that and got an estimate at that time, and just weren't quite ready to take the plunge right yet then. But that really got us thinking about it. And so then in 2020, we decided we really wanted to do this. At the time, the 26% federal tax rebate was expiring in 2020. That was since extended this year, and is it also next year? I think so.
Yeah, through 23.
23. Okay. But at the time, we thought it was expiring at the end of 2020. So we had missed out on the 30. We wanted to at least be able to take advantage of the 26%. And so we started looking into it. We had another friend who had worked with Homeland Solar, and so we got an estimate from them and decided to go with that. And I'm really happy to have Larry and Dave on here tonight with us. So thank you for coming to this. And if people have technical questions, they will be able to answer those a lot better than we can. So anyway, we got that done. We installed our system in Ann Arbor. It went up on the roof on July 24th and was turned on after all the inspections and everything on September 4th, which that was a really hard wait with a whole lot of sunshine that we didn't get to harness while we had panels on our roof already. So that was great. We also did a level 2 charger installation for our van as part of that installation. So we can charge the van in under 2 hours now, compared to it used to be about 13. And we thought we were done. But in the course of kind of wrapping everything up after that system was finished, I was talking with Larry, and I mentioned that we have this place on a lake in Jackson. And he said, well, did you know that net metering is still available with consumers? And we did not know that. So we had missed out on the net metering opportunity in Ann Arbor with DTE. But discovering that, we were kind of talking about, like, maybe someday we'll put solar on the lake house as well. Finding out that we could still get in under net metering made us really consider moving that timeline up, and especially also with the 26% rebate that at the time was expiring. So we really scrambled, and Larry gets a lot of credit for this. Because there was some negotiating that had to happen with consumers along the way. We didn't have a year of electric bills that reflected the way we were using the house at the time. And so they initially did not approve our proposal, and Larry went to bat for us and explained how the more recent months reflected actual usage where the earlier months hadn't, and got that approved. And I believe we got in the last week or maybe 2 weeks of net metering in consumers. And so now we're grandfathered in for 10 years with that. So that was really huge. And that system went on the roof in November. Oh, we also had to get a new roof there first. So that was another little complication of getting that done, which we knew when we bought the house 3 years earlier that we were, or 2 years earlier that we were on borrowed time with that roof. So everything kind of had to fall into place. We got that up at the end of November, and that system was turned on in the middle of December 2020. So we have almost a year worth of data from both houses now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show you some things. Okay. So here's our proposal for the Ann Arbor house. So this will give you an idea of what we have there and the cost on that. And there's the diagram that they give us. Yes.
We're still seeing the intro slide.
Oh no. I am not seeing the intro slide, so I don't know what happened there. Oh, wait a minute. It says sharing is paused. Now are you seeing it?
Still the intro slide. You could maybe stop sharing and
Let me try
re-share.
again. Sorry about that.
Mhm.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, now you got it.
Okay, great. I don't know what happened there. Thanks. Okay, so this is our proposal for the Ann Arbor house, and you can see the diagram of what that system was going to look like. Looks like somebody is drawing on the screen there. If I don't know where that's coming from.
It might be your mouse.
I'm not touching my mouse. It's
Wow. It's the ghost of the solar stories.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from.
No one else has screen access. Okay, interesting.
Are you sure no one else has screen access? Should I stop it again and restart it to get rid of that?
No, just keep going. I think it seems to have stopped.
Well, I think it's going to be on every slide. Let me just stop and reshare to try to get rid of it. Okay. So this was our proposal for the Ann Arbor house. So we had a total cost of just under $22,000. That was before the 26% rebate. And that also included our level 2 charger, which it had $1,000 allowance for that, but we also got a $500 rebate from DTE on that. So we got the 26% back plus a $500 rebate. And we have 27 panels there. Any questions about this before I move ahead?
So that's how many kilowatts on that home? 7.6, it looks like. Yeah, 7.6.
I think it's 8.6.
8.64.
Yep, 8.64.
Oh, I see it there. Yeah, thanks.
So here's some pictures from installation day. So our house has a daylight basement. So the back of the house, which very conveniently faces due south, is really high. So the way they did this was they went up the front of the house and over the roof to do the installation. So you can see them there working on it. And then the finished product there. So just a little bit of information about this one. It went up on the roof on July 24th and was activated on September 4th, which was a very long 42 days. And that comes in a little bit with my comparison. And I don't know whether this is a DTE to consumers comparison or whether this is, we're actually not Ann Arbor, we're Pittsfield Township. So whether this was a Pittsfield Township to Leone Township, which is the Jackson home, but there was a big difference in how many days. So, and just some data from where we are now since September 4th, 2020, we have saved 21,783 almost pounds of CO2 emissions, or the equivalent of planting 164.5 trees. So that feels pretty amazing. And that is data coming from the Solar Edge app. So then we went ahead with the second one. So here is the Jackson proposal. This is a 6.63 kilowatt system. And again, we were blessed with a southern facing roof. It's actually the roof of the garage in this case. One big difference is in Ann Arbor, there are no trees anywhere near our roof. So that was not a consideration at all. Where in Jackson, we have some pretty big shade issues. This is a big spruce tree. Can you see my mouse moving? Okay, and this is a huge catalpa tree. So the aerial view doesn't really do it justice. And this is a big magnolia tree. But then over here, our street is called Pine Drive, and it is well named. There are huge old pine trees all along this side. So we really had to look carefully at whether this made sense to do. I went out and looked at the roof at all different times of day. I took pictures of the roof at all different times of day. I was sending pictures of the roof to Larry to decide that this really was going to work. And it's pretty amazing for how many trees we are, how much the sun actually hits that southern facing garage roof. So this system was $13,800, again, before the 26% rebate. And here's this one in action. This was a lot easier roof to get up on. And the finished product there. So this one only took 25 days from when it went on the roof until we were able to get it turned on in the middle of December, compared to the other one, which went up in July, and we missed the entire month of August. But I'm trying to remember, I believe Pittsfield had to do an inspection where Leone Township didn't. And I believe also that DTE did an inspection that consumers did not do. So there were just a lot more pieces to getting the approval and being able to turn this on in Ann Arbor than there were in Jackson. And
Andrea,
so
you've got a hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see
No, that's
that.
okay. Yeah, Tom has a question. You can unmute yourself, Tom, if you want.
I'm cheating. It's actually Alyssa, the wife. I just was wondering, what's the square footage on the house, not the lake house, the first house you talked about?
2250.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
So Andrea, can I say something quickly?
Absolutely.
One of the things that happens when you're waiting for the utility, they come out and they basically program the meter for two-way flow, because the standard meter just is one-way flow. And in DTE's territory, DTE does that and goes on site to do it. And consumers, they do it remotely. So, you know, it just streamlines the whole process. Somehow DTE can't do that or doesn't want to do that, more likely doesn't want to do it. So, you know, add more time just because of whatever. I had to get my gripe in.
Well, and we had a further wrinkle with that because we had signed up for, now I can't think what the rate was called, but the one that has more different rates over the course of the time of day. And we had signed up with that thinking that would work better for us after reviewing all the options. Nowhere in the DTE rate literature does it tell you that that rate is not compatible with solar. So we went through all this and then got a call from DTE saying, so you're on this rate, so you can't turn your solar panels on. As if that was going to be the action, the answer to that was just, oh, okay, we won't use our solar that we just installed then. Rather than, okay, let's switch our rate to something that works. So there is a rate, it's still a variable rate. We still have peak and off peak, but we can't get all the variations that they offer, which my guess is that that would be too beneficial to solar customers and they don't want that to happen. Which is again, another gripe and something to advocate for, that solar customers should be able to have full access to the rate plans. Anyway, back to the Jackson house. So we're at 78 trees planted and 10,368 pounds of CO2 emissions saved there. So the Solar Edge app is a really fun way to kind of geek out on all of this and be very aware of what's happening. So the top is Ann Arbor, the bottom is Jackson, and you can see on the left, those two screenshots are just from this afternoon. So today was a really nice solar day, especially in Ann Arbor, and we were getting 6.38 kilowatts at the time that I took that picture this afternoon at 1:45. And then next to it, I have the overview of the whole year. 2020 is in blue, 2021 is in green. So now that we're starting to have months repeat from where we already had solar last year, it's really fun to see a comparison. Like, you know, September was better this year, October and November were better last year. The really surprising thing in looking at this was March. This March was incredible. Like in Ann Arbor, it was just about our best month. I think August slightly edged it out. And in Jackson too, March was a really great month. So it's just fun to be able to look, and it has all different views. You can look at a graph for the day, a graph for the week, a graph for the month, and then this one for the year, and really have a good sense of what's happening. That app also gives us a layout where we can look at what each individual panel is doing. So this is, again, you can look at that for any period, you know, day, week, month, year. This is annually what we are getting from each of our panels. So this is in Ann Arbor, and then the same thing for Jackson. And then we also have an app called Dte Insight. This is only available with DTE. Consumers doesn't have anything like this. I hope maybe someday they will, because this app is really fun. It requires something called an energy bridge, which is this little thing that plugs in and connects all of this. It talks to the meter. So this is a way to see in real time what's happening. So the one on the left is today. You can see exactly what you're getting at the moment. So today was a nice sunny day. At the time where I took the screenshot, you can see that we were getting negative 5,849 watts, which is a really nice place to be. Tonight, while we were cooking dinner, while charging the van in the dark, we were spending about 9,500 watts. So, you know, it goes both ways. The gold is when we're negative. So that's when we're producing more energy than we're using. The green is where we're pulling more energy from the grid than what we're producing. So you can see really clearly when we charge the van. That's what these big green spikes are. And then of course it's green all during the night when there's no solar being produced. But today was a really nice day. It looks like it got a little cloudy right there, but you can see that we were producing more energy than what we needed today and sending it up to the grid. There's also a nice weekly view in this. Now it's December, so and it's been cloudy and snowy. So you can see every day for the last week here is green. That means every day in the last week, we have pulled more energy from the grid than what we've sent. But looking at this other day that I happen to have a screenshot of because it was a really great day, this was February 27th, and we were getting huge solar energy, and we were 7 out of 8 days producing more than we needed in February. So that was pretty exciting. And it's just, that's a really fun way to see real time, and also to be able to tell what affects it, like looking at what happens when we turn on the stove or when we turn on the dishwasher or the washing machine, or, you know, obviously plugging in the car is the really big one. So what does the bottom line mean on all this? This is a comparison of our electric and gas costs for 2020 and 2021. And I put gas in there just to kind of see, gas, nothing really changed. So I could kind of see, like, is the gas price comparable to what it was a year ago compared to the electric? Just a note about the totals at the bottom. These totals only reflect January through October. So the November and December data that I have for 2020, but not for 2021, these are not included in this total. So it's a real comparison. So you can see we had a pretty dramatic decrease in our electric bill from 2020 to 2021, January through October. And you can see even in the summer when our electric bill was really high, when we were running the air conditioning, that's a really huge difference there. And meanwhile, the gas bills were staying pretty similar all the way through. And here's just a picture of our van plugged into our level 2 charger. And we just love that instead of burning fossil fuel, now we're driving on sunshine. And so here's the same thing for Jackson. And this is where you can really start to see what happens with net metering compared with the distributed generation. During the summer, we had $9 and $10 electric bills. And so the difference there is when with the net metering, consumers is essentially paying us the same amount for what we send up to the grid as what we pay them for what we need to pull from the grid. Where with DTE, with distributed generation, we are paying the distribution costs for everything we take from the grid, and that's about half of the cost of the energy. But when we send all that extra energy, like what you saw in the gold bars on those really good days in February, they weren't paying us the distribution costs for any of that. So that's what makes the big difference there. The other
I have a question.
Yes.
In consumers under their net metering, can you theoretically get to zero, or are there some charges that will always be there? Or because I know on DTE's bill, besides the fact that they're not paying you full retail rate, there are charges that are fixed, that just will be there no matter what. Is that the same with consumers? Do you know?
Yes, so,
I think
so. Every utility will have a service charge. It's a fixed charge.
Okay.
I think it's
usually $10, something
Yeah.
or less.
Would be less because you once had a $9.
Right. I think it's like seven something plus taxes
Okay.
is the fees that are never going to go away. The other interesting thing with this, and I don't know yet whether this is a difference in distributed generation compared with net metering or whether this is a difference in our usage, but right now we have about $106 banked with DTE and we have $0 banked with consumers. So I'm not sure whether it's just, our Jackson home has a smaller system, so maybe we don't quite have enough to keep banking it, or whether there's any difference between how we're allowed to spend that banked amount with net metering. The other thing that kind of factors into this so that we don't really know what the numbers would be is our air conditioning in Jackson broke this summer. So we did not have central air this summer where we did for part of the summer last year. We did install one window unit, which we kind of tried to run in the upstairs hallway with all the doors open to try to cool all the bedrooms, which is a really inefficient way to use a single window unit, but that's what we had. So that $76 electric bill in July is all about that window unit. So the other thing I want to mention is what's next. We are kind of thinking about ways to further electrify and take advantage of this, especially with that broken air conditioner in Jackson, and our furnace out there is from, I think, 1985. So we're definitely on borrowed time with that furnace. We went to a fantastic heat pump presentation a couple months ago that Julie organized, and we're looking into installing a heat pump. And in fact, the contractor we've been talking to actually called me today with some updates. The challenging thing about this is there's new technology coming. This is so cutting edge and so new that it sounds like the perfect system for us is about a year away. And so as long as we can limp along with that old furnace working, it might be worth waiting until we can really do this right. Some other things we're thinking about in Ann Arbor, we have a gas dryer, thinking about maybe switching to an electric dryer, although our laundry room is not wired for that, so there would be some additional cost there. Let me see, there's a question in the chat. Steps we've taken to tighten the building envelope. So when we put on a new roof in Ann Arbor 10 years ago, we had blown in insulation added there. That was the biggest thing that we've done there. And we've done, like, we've switched to all the LCD lights, or not,
LED.
LED,
yeah.
LED lights. So we have all the LED light bulbs. And, you know, having that Dte Insight app really makes us aware of when we're using electricity and what is drawing the most. So, you know, just doing things like we're trying to run the dishwasher while the sun is shining. Trying to, whenever we can, charge the car in the morning while the sun is shining before the peak rate kicks in. And you know, the rainy, cloudy day or solar, you know, the solar panels are under snow. That's actually a really funny thing, is that the pitch of our roof in Ann Arbor makes it so that when it snows, they of course get covered, but it hits like a critical point where the snow just all crashes off the roof with a huge thud, which terrifies our dog. So our dog is really struggling with that. Where in Jackson, it's a less steep roof and the snow tends to sit there, but it's also lower. So I think we're going to need to get some kind of a rake or something, you know, one of the foam rakes to deal with that.
Maybe Larry can set up a meeting with DTE and have the DTE person show up right when the snow falls.
This is a non-violent group here at GLREA.
We better.
Someone asked if we have any batteries for storage. We do not. That was something we looked at. And while we would love to, especially in Ann Arbor, store our own energy rather than selling it to DTE at a discount that they're not giving us back, it just wasn't cost effective to do that right now. We also very, very rarely lose power. And when we do, it's usually for less than a minute. So I know we have friends in areas where the power is not so reliable in Ann Arbor. Ours is really reliable. So it just wasn't cost effective. But as that technology progresses and the costs come down, it's something I would love to be able to add. I see some, oh, funny how DTE colors electric consumption is green. Well, it's money for them, right? Oh, I did not realize that other home automation devices can collect that data.
If you're interested, there's the way the Energy Bridge works. It has a little miniature server on it, effectively, and it uses something called MQTT, which broadcasts on your network every 3 seconds or so the latest power consumption. And then you can set up something like your laptop or whatever. If you have the right software on it, you can subscribe to that topic, and then you can see the power at the meter every 3 seconds.
So you're saying you can do that without paying DTE $2 a month for their little device?
I don't know about that. I mean, you need
Okay.
to have the little device. You need to have the energy bridge.
You still
But-
have to have it. Okay.
Yeah. So I have one that I've had for quite a long time now, and if you're into computers and stuff, you can figure out how to do that.
My husband's a software engineer, so yeah, I think we'd be interested in that.
Yeah, just find the IP address for the that the energy bridge has in your house, and tell him to look there. And it has an MQTT server on it, and you can use something called Mosquito on Linux to subscribe to it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think he will be interested in exploring that. I think we have a Raspberry Pi lying around too.
So the next crazy idea would be like, in order to, because you have that device in your house, you can see whether the power from the solar panels is matching what your house is using. And if your husband is handy and bored, he could potentially figure out how to make your EV charger so that it'll change the power level to match. So like you said,
Oh,
and I agree, I have an EV, and I try to charge it when it's the best time, like you said, but your car will take it at whatever speed your charger says, and that's just usually a fixed setting. But some car chargers, the EVSE, can have a variable speed, a variable power rate to the car. So you could have something like your Raspberry Pi look at the power consumption for your house based on looking at the meter. And it doesn't even necessarily have to know how much solar or whether you're running something else in the house, but it could send the excess to your car if your car is home. And then you'd start to minimize how much power you outflow back to the grid and get not as good a credit as you could get if you just use it directly.
interesting. Thank you. That's fascinating. I know our charger has some variability because our van was overheating and we had to turn it down. So there is some ability to play with that. That's fascinating. Thank you.
Yep.
There's a question, do smart meters have some sort of monitoring software for consumers? So we have the SolarEdge app for consumers, but we don't have anything that talks to our meter that can see what we're pulling in real time. So no, as far as I know, there's nothing like that. I checked with them when we got the DTE energy bridge and got that all set up. I looked into whether consumers had anything like that, and at that time they did not. So the other thing I wanted to mention is the Solarize program. We did not end up doing our solar through a Solarize program, although we were very grateful to the one that Julie hosted that kind of got us going down the path a year later. And then at the time that we did this, Homeland was not participating in Solarize, but they are now. And I have since hosted a Solarize event to share about that and to bring on a group discount with Homeland. So we did that in the fall.
Andrea, you might want to mention what that is.
Oh, okay. So
I don't know if
Solarize,
everyone knows what that is.
and you might want to jump in and be more specific than I can be, but Solarize is a program where someone hosts and a solar installer does a presentation, and then anybody who buys in through that event, I think within a month, it's usually about, gets a discount. 2 months? Within 2 months, gets a discount on their installation. So for anyone here who is thinking about doing this, I would really encourage you to host, talk to an installer about hosting a Solarize event and getting friends there, getting it publicized. Julie coordinates this and does a great job of publicizing it, getting people in there so that everybody involved can get a discount as a group buy.
Got it. I see Tom's hand again, and I know I see a little bit of your wife's ear, but I think it's, I don't know if it's Tom or you have a question.
Yeah, it's the wife again. Did you, what led you to like maybe not go with the solarized option?
We just, at the time that we would have needed to commit to it, to be part of that solarized, we just decided we weren't quite ready to do it. And so then when we started looking again, we had talked to another friend who had done this and had worked with Homeland and was really happy with them. And the quote from Homeland actually came in quite a bit under the original quote we had gotten with Solarize. So even though we didn't get a Solarize discount, what we ended up getting was a lower cost than if we had gone ahead with that.
Okay, thanks.
John?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I have to ask because I was on a Zoom yesterday where people couldn't hear me inexplicably, but it's working today. Andrea, you said, I think that you got a time of day rate for your house in Ann Arbor in addition to the solar. Is that true?
No, so we chose, am I getting the name of the rate right? Is it the time of day rate, the one that we can't have? Julie, do you know?
Ask Larry. Larry's way more
Larry?
up on this than me.
The DTE really confused things by throwing out some time of day rates that do not support solar, including dynamic peak pricing.
That's what it's
However,
called.
there is a rate, it's called D1.2 time of day. It's available to anybody that's on D1, which is the standard residential rate. It's got on peak. On peak is from 11 a.m. until 7 p.m. And then it's got off peak from 7 p.m. until 11 a.m. the next day. And it's quite a bit more expensive during on peak hours, but the compensation for the export is nearly twice as much as it is for the D1 rate, which is what most people are on. So during on peak hours, you can actually get 15.3 cents per kilowatt hour for every kilowatt hour, exported. That's
Larry,
considerable.
that's under the distributed generation tariff or under net metering?
The distributed generation tariff. DTE,
Okay, thank you.
And
D1
that is the rate that we have. The rate we had signed up for shortly before putting on the solar array was the dynamic peak pricing one, which nowhere in their literature does it say you're not allowed to have this rate with solar. So we had chosen that. We were enrolled in their Smart Currents program where they sent us a free thermostat. And then we got our solar put on and they said, oh, well, you can't turn that on because it's not compatible with your rate. And so we switched to the rate that Larry just described. And then like a year later, they came after us for, you have to switch your rate because we gave you a free thermostat. And we said, yes, please let us have dynamic peak pricing. And they said, well, you can't because you have solar. And we had a whole going around in circles with DTE about our rate again a couple months ago. They eventually decided that they agreed they were being ridiculous and they let us keep the thermostat, even though they won't let us use the rate required to have it.
They agreed. They usually deny being ridiculous when I talk to them.
Yeah.
That sounds like who's on first,
They let us keep the thermostat to get us to stop complaining about it. So,
So
the
the
rate-
reason I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
yeah,
No,
go ahead.
you go, John.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question is because I've got solar. I've had it for about 4 years now. I'm very happy with it. But I was inquiring with DTE about getting onto a time of day rate, and I think they told me that that it would be unreasonable for me to do it. Not that it was against the rules, but it would be financially unreasonable for me to do it because the buying and selling balances are kept separately for the high.
Oh, we lost your audio right at the peak of interesting thing you were about to say.
Even though we can't hear John, I think the essence of it is if you are on net metering, just stay on net metering and don't switch to time of day.
No, net metering, not net metering. We're talking about DTE.
No, I understand, but
Oh.
DTE, 4 years ago, John is on
Oh.
net metering.
Oh, he's net
And
metered.
if you are grandfathered into net metering, you don't switch to time of day because you can't do better than
Right.
net metering.
Right.
Well, they're two separate, you can kind of do two separate things. He's on net metering. When we were still net metered, about a year or two before we lost net metering, I did switch to the time of day rate. It is allowed to have time of day rate on net metering. And like Larry was saying, and maybe it's been explained before, but it can be confusing. In the end, it will work out better for you, I believe, if you have solar, to be on the time of day, even though you're net metered. You will, if you do that, you will end up having to pay for electricity in the wintertime, even though you have this huge bank of electricity built up in the summer. So DTE will explain that, oh, this is confusing. And customers will call DTE and complain and say, hey, why am I paying electric bills in January, February when I have this balance here? And it's because they're separate. They're separate categories of power. But you will win if you do this when you lose net metering. When you switch off of net metering, when they kick you off, kicking and screaming, they will convert those kilowatt hours of energy at whatever the future rate is for electricity, which is awesome. I don't think they're going to have that ever go down. Once you're on distributed generation, if you do the time of day rate like Andrea is on, it sounds like, and I'm on, what can also happen, depending on how big your array is and how much you self-consume, you can get kind of the same thing. You get a buildup of credits that you might not be able to use for a while. Once you're on distributed generation, the credit is in dollars, and the problem is that it can only be used for power supply. So you can only use it to buy the plain electricity. You still have to pay the delivery. So depending on your consumption and your habits, you can end up with a large balance. But again, in 10 years or however long, when I'm done with the utility, I will have this large bank of credit and they'll have to cash it out at that point.
So
That's my
can you
theory.
hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Dale described it in much more detail than I was trying to, but I wonder if, Andrea, if you're aware, if you have that buildup of high rate electricity credits that you can't use during the low rate.
Well, we don't have net metering with DTE, so I don't think it works that way for us.
Well, don't they still separate the high rate from the low rate? No? In distributed generation?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay,
Larry,
I
can you answer
misunderstand
that?
Well, generally speaking, when you go to apply for the interconnection, you can only apply for your last 12 months of usage. So it's relatively unusual for you to have generation that's greater than what you're actually using. Now, Dale, maybe in your case, you managed to get more capacity than you're actually using, and that allows you to carry credits forward and as long as you're on net metering, you won't see it, as you say, you'll get credits. And then at the end, 6 years, 8 years, whenever you age out of net metering, you'll get some kind of a credit. That is certainly possible.
Larry, you're correct. Yeah, I've reduced the consumption in the house by quite a bit. So yeah, what you said is true. Yeah.
This is John. I have tremendous respect for Dale, and he knows more about the intricacies than I do by far. But I really worry about sitting on a bank of credits for 5, 6, 7, 8 years with DTE, because they're always going to the Public Service Commission trying to tweak everything all the time. And it wouldn't surprise me if at some point down the road, there was almost like, if you don't use your credits by a certain period of time, they may just wipe them clean off the slate. So I'm not saying you shouldn't follow Dale's advice, but I would really be careful about sitting on something for a long time. And
It's not, yeah, it's not really a plan to make the system pay back or anything. It's more just like what happens to happen. And it's not that huge an amount anyway. It's, but the one with, the other point to make with, if you're on distributed generation or the other one, or net metering, if you're on time of day rate, 5 days a week, the solar production mostly happens on peak. And so you get a better credit for it. On weekends, you don't get any better credit for it. You only get like 4 cents or something is the outflow credit for off peak. And if you're charging a car, if you just time it right, you can be consuming electricity at 4 cents for the power supply, but you're taking that off of your bank that you built up at 15 cents. So you can kind of get almost like 3 or 4 times as much inflow off peak as what you flowed out during peak. So it can be good for cases like charging a car at night, I think. You still have to pay the delivery charge of 6 or 7 cents on all of that electricity, but otherwise it's kind of free electricity to charge a car. You just have to pay for transmission.
I've found that almost in every case that you do better on the D1.2 time of day rate with solar than you do on the standard D1 rate, almost in every case. And what makes the case even better is if you actually have an EV, because now you can load shift, and there's no better load shifter than an electric vehicle. So a lot of people get very confused. Somehow they think that they are charging overnight, that they're getting a low rate from DTE. Not true. They're getting the very same rate. They're charging at the same 17, 18 cents per kilowatt hour that they charge if they were charging their car during the day. And then I understand that. The only way to overcome that is the D1.2 rate, which is time of day.
So just to clarify, then if you have the regular D1 rate, then charging your car when you're producing the most in the middle of the sunny day is good to be able to use your energy production behind the meter. But if you have is this correct? If you have the D1.2 rate, charging your car at nighttime is a better solution than charging it during the bright sunny day. Is that what you're saying?
I spend a lot of time thinking about this particular problem. The best time to charge your electric vehicle when you're on the D1.2 time of day rate is between 9 and 11, Monday through Friday.
9 and 11 p.m.
No,
or
AM.
AM.
Because that's still off peak.
Oh,
it's
The
off
sun is
peak.
shining.
And the sun is shining, and if you weren't using it, it would be exported. And if you exported it, you're getting squat.
I see.
So, but 11 o'clock, you want to shut it down so that then you go from getting nothing to getting 15.3 cents per kilowatt hour. I think that's what you're doing, Andrea, right?
Well, that's what we try to do. We also try to have the car charged so that we're using battery rather than gas whenever possible, because it's a hybrid. So sometimes that means we have to charge it at night. It just depends on when we're driving and what our usage is. But just for if there's anybody in consumers territory here, peak hours are 2 to 7 there. So it's a much better setup than the 11 to 7 peak for DTE. So we have a lot more flexibility of charging the car during peak solar production, but off peak. But we don't have a level 2 charger there, so it takes 13 hours to charge.
Andrea, I want to elevate something that you said earlier that kind of wraps into this whole discussion, which is that This is all very, I mean, technical and sort of in the weeds and great for those of us who sort of live and breathe this stuff. But the truth is that solar can be really simple too and lazy. You can just put it on and go about your life, and then your bills go down. You don't have to get this in the weeds. But fair warning, if you're thinking about solar, you get in the weeds when you didn't think you were sometimes. Andrea mentioned that it was the solar that prompted her to start paying more attention to her electricity use. And one of the interesting things that I've learned and been hearing about is that, the traditional sense of efficiency first, right? You reduce how much energy you use first. That's the best thing and first thing that you should do before you start looking to electrify and doing solar. That it might be true, but it, from a human behavior standpoint, isn't really, it's sort of not really gained traction in the general public, right? Big meetings about energy efficiency are rarely well attended, and it's just not a very sexy subject. So people just, they do it. They may put in some insulation if they're cold or their bills are too high, but it's not a really game changer. But a lot of people, what we're seeing is you get solar and all of a sudden you become aware of, when you turn on electricity, where that's coming from, and is it sunny out, and do I need this, and how efficient is that? And now you start seeing people getting energy audits and trying to work on efficiency and reducing usage because they've become aware of it through their solar arrays. So I think it can work in both directions. And I think it's, you just beware that if you end up going solar and you're not solar yet, you may jump on the bandwagon and get into weeds of 5.12 day rate stuff.
No,
All right.
I think this is John Freeman with GLRVA, and I think Julie is really spot on. I mean, there's two parts to this renewable energy revolution. Is not only how we produce the electricity, but it's also giving consumers and business people control, a much greater understanding of their energy expenditure and control over it. And that control is coming at the expense of DTE and consumers, and they don't like that. And that's why I think part of the reason why they're trying to oppose, not lifting the cap and all that, because they see consumers acting much more intelligently about their energy consumption, and they're frightened by that. And my only other comment is that I think this conversation about when the best times to charge your car is fascinating, but I think we should stay tuned, because as electric cars increase in the numbers that are going to be purchased by people, that there's going to be a lot of activity with the Public Service Commission about coming up with rates that more reflect all these new technological changes. And that's one of the things that GLREA is going to be doing a lot of work on, is monitoring these rates and participating in the regulatory process. And this is a question for John Sarver. I know that we've got Julie Baldwin coming on Solar Stories soon. I forget the exact date, but I want to make sure everyone shows up for that, because Julie is our lead, our favorite person at the Public Service Commission, and she can really help us navigate and understand some of the challenges that the Public Service Commission is going to be addressing as electric cars and electrification of heating becomes even more increased in numbers.
So,
Julie Baldwin from the PSC will be on next Thursday, December 9th from 7 to 8. And so she's going to give a brief update, 10 minutes, but then be available to answer any questions. And, one thing to keep in mind in talking to Julie, she, like all the commission staff, are constrained by whatever the legislature does. And so, she can kind of give us an insight to what the commission is up to, but they do have constraints because, the legislature writes the laws, the commission doesn't. But she has always been very helpful. She's been very supportive of GLREA and is really one of our friends within the bureaucracy.
And she has
I wanna
solar
see-
herself on her house.
Mhm.
So
I want to
that's-
see a heat pump rate. That's what we need. We have a geothermal rate. We need a air source heat pump rate so that we can actually move this, mass electrification forward. So if I'm not there next Thursday, which now I'm going to try to be, someone take that and ask her to make a air source heat pump rate. We need, they do it for geo, they should do it for heat pumps. That's my 2
So
cents.
can I say one more thing about this particular topic?
And then to
So-
Lee.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lee, you go ahead if you want.
Well, I just agree with John and about people being more interested in their power. It's almost as if it's your power, you care about it, but if it's power you just paid money for, it's not as important. My son put solar on his house and his daughter started talking about her electricity. And ownership really drives people's attitudes about the things around them. That's all.
Lee, I think that's really right. Yeah. And go ahead,
So-
Larry.
What I was going to say is that my understanding is that DTE is about to file another rate case. They can basically do a rate case every year, and they delayed this for a number of reasons. But sometime, I believe in January, maybe February, they're going to do another rate case. That rate case will work its way through the Michigan Public Service Commission process for about 10 months. DTE has a very large staff of people that work on rate structures, and they have so many more resources than the Michigan Public Service Commission has. Not only that, but they've got access to all the data. And I can guarantee you, the first thing that drives that process is profit. It is not what's best for rate holders. It's not what's best for solar. In fact, they will work and do everything they can to disadvantage solar in every single rate case that they work on. That is a guarantee. So this is where we, as GLREA and other organizations, need to be active, because we can't let them get away with it. We need to show up at the Michigan Public Service Commission meetings. We need to let the Michigan Public Service Commission know that this is important to ratepayers. Because if you don't, they'll just glide right through. They've got people sitting at the MPSC all the time, staffs of people. And everybody else is at a disadvantage. It's just very, very clear.
Or if you live in Ann Arbor, you can join our hopeful sustainable energy utility, which you can find out more about if you attend the meeting on Saturday and listen to Missy Stoltz.
And
So
sad to be half a mile outside the ability.
Yeah, unless you're Andrea and you're just outside of Ann Arbor, because legally Ann Arbor can only be a utility for Ann Arbor.
There are a couple of things in the comments. Kate, I love your comment. It was so funny when I put that picture up behind me. I was like, oh, I'm showing the Playhouse, which doesn't have solar, and you picked up on it. And then Ashley asked, does it show what you have on your bill? Wondering what we have after all of this. I think you're asking, does it show your excess energy bank?
No,
Tell me if
the
I'm getting
rate.
this wrong.
Is she talking about the rate?
I don't know. Is the rate or maybe wondering what your rate is. It should show what your rate is on your bill.
Yeah, it absolutely does. It shows you what you're paying, and it also shows you the amount of credits you have as well, because I'm on net metering. Well, I have net metering, but I'm with DTE myself. So
But it shows your rate, like if you're D1 or whatever.
D1.1 or D1 point, which rate you're in net metering or time of day. Yeah, it'll be like D1.1 or D1.2 or D1.8 or whatever. And then you can look up, DTE has a rate table that explains all of them with all the details.
And if you
which we-
ever want to talk to DTE about your solar billing, do not just call DTE. You have to call the distributed generation line. Otherwise, it's like talking to a wall. And at least the people that answer the distributed generation line know what you're talking about and can theoretically answer your questions. So make sure you call that specific line, I would say.
Yeah, I've gotten some people who really do know their stuff at that line. And Charles had a comment that says it's interactive. The money I saved from energy efficiency I used to finance solar. When I further saw the output from my solar, I further changed my behavior and deplugged as well. So yeah, just what Lee and Julie were saying.
Exactly. And now I'm addicted. Like I have an induction stove. I switched out my gas stove. My husband dragged him along. Now he's a proponent of it. He's the cook. So anyway, and I've got a heat pump dryer. I can talk to you about that Andrea, at some point, if you'd
Oh,
like.
wait, there are
Um,
heat pump dryers?
There are heat pump dryers. I have one. It's the
Okay, yeah,
coolest thing
let's
ever.
talk dryers. Oh,
And then the furnace and water heater will be next, but they're too new. So I'm trying to hold off because it doesn't make sense. But anyway, we are at 6 minutes past. This has been a great conversation. And Andrea, your presentation was fantastic. I think that it'll be a great one to be able to point people to who just want to understand the big picture of how it all works. You just laid it out so beautifully. The process, the costs, the paybacks, just well done. Thank you for sharing this with the group and for allowing it to be recorded so that folks can come watch. So, and for those of you who talk to people who might want solar, send them to these recorded talks, because that was gold. Thank you, Andrea.
thank you so much for the chance to do this. And thank you to everybody who attended and for all of your excellent comments. That was really helpful to me too. I learned some new things.
And if we're being called Energy Geeks by Dale Klein, I think we won something. We won the prize. Anyway, thank you all for coming and have a great rest of your evening.